Hi everybody, it's Whitney from All the Shelves. Today I am finally filming my top 5 books about Bruce Springsteen. This will be a video about all nonfiction. These are my 5 favorite memoirs, academic studies, or popular nonfiction about Bruce Springsteen, who is the love of my life, as you can see back here. I love Bruce Springsteen so much. I've read so much about him. Let me just show you how many books that I actually own. Look at all those. These are all the ones that I just own that I've read about Bruce Springsteen, and I have read a lot of articles and books that I don't own about him, in addition to just listening to his music every day, traveling for concerts, thinking about him nonstop, watching interviews. I mean, I'm an obsessive fan. I'm one of those people. So buckle up. Get ready for me to talk about Springsteen for a while. I'll try and keep this short, but I'm going to give you my picks for the stuff that you could read whether or not you're a massive fan. So for those of you who are interested in Bruce Springsteen as an artist and as a massively influential figure in rock and roll, I would recommend Peter Ames Carlin's Bruce. This came out 4 years ago and I was anticipating it so much that my husband actually got it for me for Christmas, but he had to give it to me a couple months before Christmas because I was going to go out and buy it on the day that it came out and he was worried. And look, I just found an expired gift card for a pie from Village Inn that I won in a Thanksgiving Day race. So I know I got this book sometime before Thanksgiving, even though it was a Christmas present. So I think that this book is the perfect size and goes into the perfect amount of depth for somebody who is not just a casual fan, like for somebody who likes Bruce Springsteen's music. They might want to pick up this one because it is quite a commitment and there is like a lot of information in this book. What I love about this one though is that he gets into the thorny side of Springsteen without losing his kind of reverential tone that he has towards his artist. Peter Ames Carlin is obviously a fan of Bruce Springsteen, and I want to read books from fans. I don't like reading like exposés of artists where they try and dig up all the dirt on that person and then like use it to prove how that artist was like no good. I don't really like to hate read things, you know? I want to hear about the like terrible things or the just like slightly bad things that Springsteen did, but I want them in the context of him as an artist that we all love and admire. And that's what happens in this book. There's one instance that I remember really well, which was Springsteen saw like an ex-girlfriend of his off stage and she was a photographer. So she was there like taking pictures of it. It was her job, but Springsteen being like 30, maybe, I think it was his 30th birthday actually, he like kind of got a little pissy about it and he brings her up on stage. If you can see this picture, I'm not sure it's totally clear. There's Springsteen and he's bringing her up on stage even though she doesn't really want to be there, and he basically just like embarrasses her in front of thousands of people. That's a bad story. That's not something that you want memorialized in images or in biographies. But I think that those kinds of stories about him made me like him even more. A lot of times Springsteen seems like America's dad at this point. Like he seems perfect. He has the perfect little family, he has the perfect political views, you know? He just, to me, he seems like just this untouchable hero. So the little stories like that in Bruce by Carlin really serve to humanize him. The other thing that I love about this is that it's funny. The footnotes from Springsteen are hilarious. Like he quotes Springsteen in the footnotes about like him commenting on the stuff that Carlin is presenting, and Springsteen's a little bit cagey about it or makes jokes about it. Those are so funny. There's a lot of like inside baseball type talk about like how he got the name The Boss, which is in the first few pages, but I still don't want to spoil it because there's stories about how he got the name The Boss all over the place, and this one's a really good one. So it kind of like breaks apart some of the legend that Springsteen himself has told on stage and shows us what's true and what's not, and plus it's just a really good looking book, I think. nice to have on the shelf. The book that I think complements Carlin's book the best, or you might think of that the other way around, is the new autobiography from Springsteen himself. It's called Born to Run. It's gorgeous. I see this picture everywhere, and it's always on the stuff that Springsteen's actually curating, so I feel like this is like his favorite picture of himself. I don't know, it just comes up all the time, and I love it too. It just perfectly, here you can see the whole thing, to me it perfectly encapsulates what kind of an artist Springsteen is. Here he is in this ridiculously nice car. I mean, he's a man of wealth now. He's probably, besides Bono, I think he's the highest paid rock and roll musician in the world. His concerts, you know, he earns millions of dollars for each concert he does, and they all sell out, and he does them all year round, you know. But here he is, like, in front of his freehold home, and he's, like, slouching against this car, like, to show sort of what his background is like. And it's this cool dichotomy between the New Jersey homeboy who then made good, and where he stands as far as his position on the American dream. So he has a lot to say about that in this memoir, and I absolutely loved this book. This is a book that I finished reading, and then I went back and read some of my favorite parts again. And I think that's not only because I'm a huge fan, but because the way that he explains himself and the way that he accounts for his success is just absolutely beautiful. It's poetic. In the beginning, he talks about how much he loved his grandmother, and I just want to read you this paragraph as an example of his prose style and as an example of the kind of heavy material that he tries to parse in his own life, which seems like an impossible feat. For my grandmother's love, I abandoned my parents, my sister, and much of the world itself. Then that world came crashing in. My grandparents became ill. The whole family moved in together again to another half house at 68 South Street. Soon my younger sister Pam would be born, my grandfather would be dead, and my grandmother would be filled with cancer. My house, my backyard, my tree, my dirt, my earth, my sanctuary would be condemned and the land sold to be made into a parking lot for St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. So, I mean, I got goosebumps listening to that part. It's just, it's very deep, it's very personal. He talks about his depression in this. He talks about how he uses the stage as an escape for his depression. He talks about his relationship with his wife, Patti Scialfa, in just the most romantic but practical ways. And it's the same way that I feel like I think about romantic love. Maybe I'm too young to think about it this way, but as like a kind of partnership. And it's just beautiful. He talks about seeing his son for the first time and how just everything else in his life seemed to fade away, and he realized the like awesome responsibility he has as a father. And he talks about his relationship with his own father, who was in later life diagnosed with schizophrenia. So it's a beautiful book. This is one that even if you are just casually interested in Bruce Springsteen, I think that you would enjoy. I think that that works with memoirs. Because it's from the artist's point of view, it works as a kind of narrative story. It's not so much as a like, you are a massive fan, here is all the information about your favorite artist, right? This one just works on its own. My favorite academic look at Bruce Springsteen is Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen and the American Tradition by Jim Cullen. This is the revised edition where Cullen adds a great foreword and introduction. The book was originally published in 1997 and the foreword comes in 2005. And that time period is like a crucial moment in Springsteen's career when he transitioned from sort of like a almost washed up like the nostalgic act in the 90s. He was doing solo albums, but he wasn't with the E Street Band anymore, and people were kind of looking at him as a figure from, you know, the golden days of rock and roll, when in 2001 he released his album The Rising, which totally revitalized his career. In 99 he got together with the E Street Band, so The Rising was an E Street Band tour, and now he's like, again, like a global force. People don't really see him as like an oldies act. He still is putting out relevant, interesting, critically acclaimed albums. So that foreword is, I think, really, really good to have, and it puts the book in context. But this book just goes through, rather than going through Springsteen's career with different albums in sequential order, it talks about the themes in Bruce Springsteen's work. So it talks about the American dream and Catholicism and race. I think my favorite chapter was about the battle between Springsteen and Reagan Reagan, when Reagan evoked Springsteen in a speech in Hemington, New Jersey, where he said that the hopes of millions rest in the words of Bruce Springsteen, and he was referring to the song Born in the USA, which was a massive hit that year, but which Reagan either misinterpreted or misused. I am actually pretty certain that Reagan knew exactly what he was doing when he went to a small town New Jersey setting and said, like, hey, Bruce Springsteen, right? I mean, it was a name drop, and it calls on a lot of those working class feelings that Reagan was tapping into at the time. So I don't think that he misinterpreted it. Misused it, according to Springsteen, especially, and Springsteen fans, certainly. And I heard rumors that they were again playing Born in the USA at a Trump rally a few months before his election in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, somewhere in Pennsylvania. So that song continues to be misused and used as this like evocation of like American pride, born in the USA, as though that's a chant when it's, I think, meant very satirically. Anyway, his chapter on that is one of the most carefully constructed arguments I've heard about that divide between Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, Springsteen, Reagan. Usually people just say, oh, these stupid Republicans like don't even understand what that song means, and I absolutely do not think that's the case. I think it's a reappropriation, and I think Cullen would agree with me. So this book is more interested in the academic kind of close reading of Springsteen's lyrics and songs. So if you are interested more in what Springsteen has to say about America and how his poetry works, this would be the book for you. Cullen's book is a close reading of Springsteen's work, but I think Springsteen works on so many levels and could spark so much discussion that you might want to just go back to the source. This is his collection of lyrics through the 90s. So it has Human Touch, Lucky Town, and it stops at Ghost of Tom Joad. So there's nothing about The Rising or any of those later albums in this. I would love for an updated version of songs. Like, it's already huge and it's already heavy to hold up, but that would be really cool. It has little essays in it from Springsteen himself about where he was when he was recording each album. It also has lyrics written in his own handwriting, which I love his handwriting because it seems very affected to me. His T's are very loopy and his D's have these loops on them that I just feel, knowing what I know about Springsteen and how practiced he is and careful and just so thoughtful, I am kind of sure that he worked on this handwriting to make it this way, which, oh, he's just my favorite person. He has stories in both his autobiography and in the Carlin biography where he would stand in front of the mirror and like do rock star poses to get his poses exactly right. And there was a New Yorker piece, which I totally recommend, about Springsteen from, it was probably around the same time as Carlin's book came out, probably in 2012 or so, when it was talking about him getting ready for the Wrecking Ball tour and how he, you know, gave outfits to each person. Like, this is sort of our dress code here. He would plan out every move. Like, this is when I get up on top of the speakers. This is when I go out in front of the crowd. Here is where I will do my crowd surfing. The fact that it's just so perfect and that he's such a perfectionist, so that Carlin, I think, uses that as a way of saying, like, see, he's kind of a hard ass sometimes, but I see that as just someone, an artist who is perfecting his craft, who doesn't just see it as a kind of, here's my album, you know, do you like it? Like this, like, sort of haphazard performance, but as a artistic piece every show, which I just really, as somebody who's watching the show, I really appreciate that. He also has a lot of pictures in here, and then of course every song, the lyrics are laid out and you can read them as poetry. It's a beautiful book to have. I actually found this at a library book sale for $1 and I almost cried. I was so excited. I mean, come on. And it even has the, it came with like a single. It even has that still in it, although it's probably scratched up. I haven't tried it. I have all this stuff digitally. So yeah, that's Songs. This is by the man, the myth, the legend himself. The last official pick for my top 5 nonfiction about Bruce Springsteen is this 33 1/3 book by Jeffrey Himes on Born in the USA. I have always heard people praise Born to Run, to an extent Wild and Innocent, and Darkness on the Edge of Town, those being Springsteen's best albums. Then you've got the hipsters who love Nebraska and the hipsters who love Bruce Springsteen, and so they say they love Ghost of Tom Joad the most. I, of course, love every single one of these albums. The only Springsteen album that I really just do not like is Working on a Dream. Oof. I really don't like that album, but other than that, even Human Touch, I'll listen to quite a few songs off Human Touch that I like. Anyway, 33 1/3, if you're not familiar with this series, it's excellent. Oh, it's so good. Alright, so they take one album, and anybody can pitch an album that they want to write about, and so they'll have one album and they will focus the whole book on that one album, what makes it good, how it was produced, and you can do anything you want with these 33 1/3 books. So I haven't read it, but I hear there's one about Celine Dion that it's just like, why do people like this? And I hear that's the best one, so I've got to read it. I've read one on the Beach Boys, I've read one on Highway 61 Revisited by Dylan, and then this one, of course, is my favorite. What I love about this is that he takes this album that has been seen as sort of Springsteen's, he's not selling out, but he is definitely paying more attention to what popular crowds want from him. And he uses that to talk about why this is an even better album. The one thing that I remember that was totally convincing was that because this is Springsteen at his more mature, his ideas are more fully condensed, so he can say more with fewer words. He's no longer kind of like the new Dylan, which they called him for a while, and even through Darkness on the Edge of Town, there are some moments in that where he's trying to pack too much into each line. And Born in the USA is, lyrically, I think it's perfect. Not everything on it is my favorite. Glory Days is not my favorite song, but just as a concept, the album works so well. And Springsteen's pop hits are like his most complex songs, which is so cool. So this one really dives into one album, Born in the USA, and I would say that this is for a casual fan. Even somebody who doesn't love Born in the USA, 33 1/3 books are great for people who aren't even quite sure why people like things the way that they do. I read a Beastie Boys one that was that way. Like, I'm not a huge hip-hop fan or a Beastie Boys fan, and it was fascinating. So yeah, I recommend this one, but I also recommend just like the 33 1/3 series. Okay, I know those are my 5 picks, but I do have one honorable mention, which is Big Man. Real Life and Tall Tales by Clarence Clemens and Don Rio. So Clarence Clemens wrote this with the help of another writer right before he died, actually. And okay, so it's not the best written thing. Half of it is not true, and you can tell, and so like it's not very informative because it's impossible to tell what he's lying about and what he's not lying about. Also, you learn a lot more about Clarence Clemens than maybe you ever wanted to learn. Springsteen has this like clean-cut, sort of scholarly almost, he's like a scholarly rock star, right? And Clarence Clemens is not that. Clarence Clemens is way more of your typical married a bunch of times, you know, drug addict type rock star, but he's still so lovable and goofy, and to read about the way that he saw his relationship between him and Bruce is really beautiful. And I especially loved the section when he talked about hearing that Springsteen was breaking up the E Street Band in the late 80s and how he took that and how devastated he was. It really puts that moment into perspective in a way that Springsteen really does not in his memoir. That's the one moment in Born to Run, the memoir, that I was a little disappointed in, was Springsteen talking about, you know, well, I just wanted a new band, I wanted to hear new things, and he kind of glosses over the kind of the pain that might have caused the other band members. And it's an interesting dynamic in the E Street Band. Like, these are musicians, they're professionals. They went off and they toured with Ringo Starr, quite a few of them. Some of them stayed with Springsteen. Like, they just sort of like mixed it up. Max Weinberg, of course, went and was the drummer on the Conan O'Brien show. I mean, like, they were fine. But I still feel like I wanted some more talk about the camaraderie and how that might have affected them, because at least according to Clarence, it was very painful. So I mentioned this one not because it's a great book, but if you really are a huge fan, then it's fun. It's fun to read, and getting those little stories is great. There's one story about him hiding marijuana, even though Springsteen has said that, like, you cannot have drugs on my tour, and it's really funny. I won't spoil it for you, but yeah, it's great. All right, I expected this video to be long because I have a lot to say about Springsteen, and it was very long. So those are my 5 favorite nonfiction picks about Bruce Springsteen, and 1 honorable mention about his saxophone player, Clarence Clemons. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been promising to do it for a long time. I have a lot more still to say about Springsteen, so I think in the future I'm actually going to come up with a 5 favorite fiction books that mention Springsteen, maybe 5 favorite fiction books that you could read alongside Springsteen albums, maybe 5 favorite Springsteen songs. I mean, I just love talking about him. I have gotten a lot of joy this morning talking about Bruce Springsteen. So this is not the last you will hear from me about my very favorite artist. There he is. And I will see you later. Bye.